This is Martin and his girlfriend Marin. People in their town consider Martin a strange guy, but only Marin is important to him. They love each other, but something changed. Sometime later, Martin wakes up next to an empty vodka bottle. He gets up unsteadily and goes to the living room, chooses a record and puts on a song, remembering Marin. But when he opens the window curtain, several people outside shout that Martin is a murderer. He leaves the house under a barrage of insults and questions about Marin's death. He gets in his car and drives off furious. In the car, he calls someone named Lee and asks to meet with him. Martin arrives at his parents' house. His father, Derek, advises him not to talk to the media. They always distort everything. Martin replies that they will think he has something to hide. His father offers to pay for a lawyer, but Martin refuses, saying that Lee is the only one who trusts his version of the story. However, his father insists that Martin cannot admit anything in front of the cameras. This irritates Martin because it shows that his family doesn't believe he is innocent. Martin leaves, and his brother Terry goes to talk to him. Terry arrives playing a trumpet and sits next to Martin. He says he'll be back at work next week, but is interrupted by Lee's presence. Lee arrives and says that at this time the family must unite. She brings bad news and tells Martin that Marin's body was destroyed and therefore there is no way to collect DNA evidence about the killer. Martin sees this as one less chance to prove his innocence, but trusts that Lee can reverse the situation. Martin leaves and goes to a bar to drink and forget his miserable situation. But upon arriving, the bar owner politely asks Martin to go drink somewhere else. However, he is old and interrupted by his daughter Glenn, who serves Martin a drink. Martin thanks her, but Glenn has ulterior motives. She takes Martin's hand and says she leaves the bar at 5 p.m., but Martin refuses her offer and leaves. During the night, Marin's father, Dale, organizes a procession in honor of his dead daughter. Several residents attend, and there he accuses Martin of murdering her. Martin listens to all the insults while hiding. He is drunk. The crowd bows their heads to pray in honor of Marin, and soon after they leave. Martin goes down and sees the altar with the photos and saints where Marin died. He remembers her and, enraged, begins to break the saints and then urinates on the altar. Glenn arrives and asks if he has gone mad. Martin replies that Marin went to church every Sunday and prayed every night, yet God let her die in that place. Cold and afraid, Glenn realizes that Martin's condition worsens and everyone takes him away. Now, everyone treats Martin like a monster, even he sees himself that way. In the morning, Martin feels something growing on his head. Desperate, he goes to the mirror and notices horns growing. He was sleeping with Glenn and asks her if she sees anything strange about him. She says he has horns. Martin despairs, but Glenn begins to exhibit strange behavior, asking Martin's permission even to eat and saying things he didn't usually say.
Should I have another one?
Why would you have another one if your stomach hurts?
Because I want to get really fat. I'm worthless anyways. Nobody will screw me without being totally drunk. Everybody in this town thinks that I'm trash.
Martin rushes out to a doctor, and the impressed receptionist asks him to fill out a form. Meanwhile, a child screams shrilly and unbearably. The girl's mother begins to exhibit the same behavior as Glenn, asking Martin's permission to hit her daughter. She also says she should separate from her husband and stay with her black golf instructor. Martin then gets up and hands over the form, but the receptionist also asks his permission to fight with the girl's mother. The two become furious and Martin tries to stop the fight, but when he touches the girl's mother, he accesses all his memories. The little girl also speaks that he wanted to burn his mother and that she's just a tramp. Martin enters the doctor's office, and the nurse displays the same behavior, saying things she would never say to another person. But the doctor arrives, and Martin is surprised that he doesn't find it strange that someone has horns. The doctor performs a brief examination and decides they should snort some pills and get very high, exhibiting the same behavior as other people, saying absurd things. But Martin gives the ultimatum, saying that the doctor must saw off the horns now. They take him to the operating room and sedate him. Martin then remembers when he met Marin at church. She caught his attention with the reflection of the crucifix. At the end of the service, she forgot her cross and Martin picked it up. Hours later, Martin was having fun with his friends blowing things up. At one point, the bomb they put in the turkey didn't explode. His fat friend Eric approaches, but the bomb explodes, covering him in mud. He gets angry, saying he'll only blow up more bombs if someone gets in the shopping cart and goes down the wooden ramp naked. Martin accepts the challenge and goes down the ramp, falling into the water. The wooden logs in the water prevent Martin from resurfacing. Luckily, one of his friends jumps in to save him and pulls him out of the water. Reluctantly, the fat guy is forced to give the bomb to Martin. Later that day, Martin took Marin's cross to a boy named Lee to fix it. Lee says he also likes Marin and should return the cross to her, but Martin gives him the bomb in exchange for fixing the cross. Arriving home, he lovingly hangs the cross and reads a book about Morse code since he learned that Marin understands it. At church later, he returns the cross to her and they go for a walk together. Marin talks about her mother's death and Martin is very sad. They are interrupted by Terry shouting that Lee lost his fingers because of the bomb. They rush to the hospital and Lee says he won't tell anyone that Martin gave him the bomb. But Lee stares intently at Marin as if he desires her. The next day, Martin takes Marin through the forest and shows her a treehouse. Martin's brother, who was passing by, just observes. Martin explains to Marin how the house works. There, Martin confesses that Lee was the one who fixed her cross, and Martin gave him the bomb to keep him quiet. Therefore, what happened to Lee was his fault. Marin doesn't care about this and tells Martin that she lost the cross on purpose and kisses him. Years later, in the same house, they have passionate sex. At that moment, Martin returns to the present and wakes up. The doctor and nurse are having sex in the operating room and say that Martin authorized it. He leaves and goes to his last hope, a priest. The priest is startled, calling him the devil's son, but Martin begs him to do something. The priest says there is no hope for Martin, and the solution would be to tie a rope around his neck. Martin then goes to Lee, but Lee doesn't seem to see Martin's horns and says that Martin might be under the influence of some drug. Martin says that maybe he went crazy and killed Marin unintentionally. Martin leaves and goes to his mother. She seems very distressed and says she would do anything for Martin. But then, under the influence of the horns, she starts saying harsh things to Martin, something a mother would never say to her son.
And I don't want you to be my son anymore. Are you gonna go away?
He goes downstairs and finds his father, and Martin already expects what will happen. His father begins to say that it was terrible for Martin to have killed Marin, but it is his duty as a father to protect his son, which is why he called his friend at the lab. Martin discovers that not only his father doesn't trust him, but also ordered the burning of the forensic lab. Martin leaves in his car and tells Lee everything that's happening. Lee invites Martin to stay at his house, but Martin says he has something to do. He stops and reporters surround him, all under the influence of the horns. Martin then orders them to beat each other up.
Got an idea. How about you guys beat the shit out of each other, and the winner gets an exclusive interview with me?
Soon after creating chaos, he goes to the bar and is poorly received. However, Martin has learned to better control his powers and manipulates people into obeying him. He asks for information about Marin's killer, and a drunk man says that his police officer cousin knows the witness, who says she saw Marin carrying Marin unconscious. Soon after, the bar owner, under the influence of the horns, sets the bar on fire. Martin goes out into the street like an endgame boss. He drives through the crazed crowd, gets into his car and finds a ring. He has a flashback where he planned with Terry and Lee to surprise Marin and propose to her. As planned, he goes to a restaurant where Marin is waiting, ready to propose. She seems sad and distant. She starts saying she's going to move to Los Angeles. Initially, Martin says he can quit his job, but Marin says she needs to leave without him for a while. Martin gets irritated, saying that Marin always said that. He wanted to get married and have children, but she says she wants to see the world and meet other people. Martin concludes that she already has someone else. Marin's silence screams yes. Martin gets frustrated and starts to lose his temper. Marin notices this and gets up. Martin still shouts his frustration to everyone present. He gets in his car and drives off like a madman, ignoring even his brother. The next day, Martin's car is parked on the sand. Two police officers arrive and ask, "When was the last time you saw Marin?" Martin says it was a short time ago. In the present time, Martin returns to the same restaurant looking for the waitress. She finds her and asks her why she lied. Under the influence of the horn, she says she lied to get on TV. She wants to be famous. Martin is shocked by the girl's behavior and leaves. He goes to find his brother Terry, remembering that Terry saw him leaving the restaurant alone. He arrives at a bar, and while his brother plays the trumpet, Glenn comes to talk to him. Martin discovers that Glenn doesn't remember what she said the previous morning, but Glenn says she's always been in love with Martin. He tells her to be happy and move to another city. He calls his brother for a conversation. Outside, Martin recounts the waitress's testimony, and Terry says it's all a lie, but lets slip that he took Marin home that night, contradicting what he told Martin, that she went alone. Martin starts hitting him. When Terry touches him, he assesses his memories of that day. A heavy rain was falling, and Terry was taking Marin home, but halfway there she asked him to stop. Terry got out of the car and thought about going after her, but decided against it because of the rain and stayed in the car. She went into the woods. In the morning, Terry woke up and found a huge rock covered in blood on the passenger seat. He went into the woods and found Marin dead with her head crushed. In a panic, Terry went to the river and threw the bloody rock. Back in the present, Martin hits his brother, but the police arrive. One of them is Eric, his overweight childhood friend. They arrest him for being out of county, disobeying a court order. The police, under the influence of the horns, say insane things like beating Martin to death and getting naked during it, but they end up only arresting him. Lee manages to free him, and Martin begins to explain that he knows who the witness is and that because of the horns, everyone tells him their thoughts. Lee, however, doesn't see any horns, until Martin notices that Lee is wearing Marin's necklace. Lee confesses and says that there are things about him and Marin that Martin didn't know. Martin concludes that Lee was Marin's lover. He walks away from Lee and, remembering moments the three of them spent together, he goes to Dave's house, Marin's father, and the snakes accompany Martin. Dave, however, points a rifle at him. Martin asks him if Marin said anything about having another man, but Dave refuses to say anything and curses Martin, wishing he would rot in jail.
A hopeless Martin goes to an abandoned building and tries to remove his horns, but without success. He is surrounded by snakes and grabs something to defend himself, but soon realizes that the snakes obey him. Later, the waitress is leaving the restaurant. She gets into her car, but the snakes begin to invade it and bite her. She falls out of the car, and Martin says that her vanity did it. Martin returns home, and the police continue to follow him. He goes to the car to talk to them and, using the power of the horn, he forces them to reveal their deepest secrets. The police officers reveal themselves to be two homosexuals and begin to kiss. He enters the house and finds his brother snorting cocaine. He tells Terry that he should use all the drugs he has stored and calls Terry selfish for not calling an ambulance or the police when he saw Marin dead. Terry says that Martin speaks the truth and that Terry should suffer for it. Martin agrees and orders Terry to use all the drugs at once. Terry begins to hallucinate fiercely and becomes completely insane. The next day, Martin is on the bridge when Lee arrives and tries to reconcile with him. Martin then rips Marin's cross from his neck and Lee finally sees his horns. He confesses that he killed Marin and was jealous of Martin because she should be with him. Martin then touches Lee and accesses his memories. Marin took Lee to the edge of the lake and said that Martin would propose to her, but something changed in her life and she couldn't accept. On the day of the breakup, Lee followed Terry's car to the woods, and while the idiot addict slept, he went into the woods after Marin. He tried to kiss her forcibly, but she refused. Marin said that she didn't separate from Martin to be with Lee because she loves Martin. This angered Lee and he started hitting her.
No, please, no!
In the present, Lee manages to turn the tables on Martin and beats him with a chain while talking about how he violated Marin and then crushed his head with a rock. Soon after, he took the rock from the crime and tried to incriminate the idiot addict Terry. In the present, Lee drags an unconscious Martin to the car and pours gasoline on him. Martin, desperate, steps on the gas pedal and crashes into the river. Soon after, Terry, at the hospital, hears the news that his brother killed himself by jumping into the river. But when night falls and Martin emerges from the river, injured but alive, he goes to Dale's house. Dale is surprised to see him and quickly understands that someone tried to kill him. He invites Martin in, believing in his Dale gives him a memento from Marin, a note that reads, "For Iggy Martin Parrish." Martin returns Marin's crucifix, but Dale says it must stay with Martin. He puts it around his neck and his curse and burns disappear. Martin returns to the forest, thinking that the horns were a blessing porque without them he would never have discovered the truth. He goes to the treehouse and reads a message left by Marin in Morse code saying that she had a rare type of cancer and that's why she refused his proposal. Martin then visits his brother, who says he needs to clear Martin's name and never use drugs again. Martin says he has to do it alone. He goes to Lee's house and invites the son of a bitch for a walk in the woods. He takes him to the place where Marin was killed and tells Lee to turn himself in to our police or he'll kill him. He's giving Lee one chance because Marin didn't want Martin to be a murderer. Suddenly, Eric arrives with Terry and with a gun pointed at Lee says he already knows everything and that Terry told him how Lee lied to everyone. Lee seems docile and says he'll turn himself in, but steals Eric's gun, shoots Terry in the leg, and kills Eric by exploding his head. At that moment, Martin rips off his neck and his wings appear, but soon after they begin to burn. Martin then transforms into a demon. Lee shoots at him, but it's useless. Lee then strikes Martin with a pitchfork, and Martin retaliates with his horns, throwing Lee far away and piercing his stomach. On the verge of death, snakes surround Lee and begin to penetrate his body, delivering the final blow. Martin is badly wounded and lies on the ground. His brother tries to help him, but Martin's gaze is distant and his body is petrifying. He remembers the first scene of the film where she was happy with Marin. They would have been happy, but injustice, jealousy, and revenge consumed them all.
love me for the rest of mine.
This is the end. If you've made it this far, comment with the key phrase, goat horns. Subscribe to help an unemployed person. Until next time, bye-bye.